Hello, my name is Brent Lyles, and I have the honor of serving as Executive Director of Friends of the San Juans. Thank you for joining me here today. It means a lot that you've set aside this time for Friends of the San Juans. I love our annual meeting because it's a time for reflection where we can look back on our accomplishments and successes of the past year. And it's pretty gratifying. We've done a lot in the last year to fulfill our mission of protecting and restoring the San Juan Islands and the Salish Sea for people and nature. As most of you know, I'm still kind of the new guy around here. I've been executive director for a little over a year now. And in that time, we've really come a long way, both programmatically and organizationally. I want to talk about our organizational successes, but first let me focus on the programmatic stuff. It's been a big year. So let me share a few highlights with you. First off, our restored beach on Susha Island, which you'll hear about in a separate video segment, is doing great. In our ongoing monitoring at this site, we're seeing fish way back in the furthest reaches of that restored salt marsh, which indicates that the salt marsh ecosystem is recovering and seems to be getting stronger by the day. Friends of the San Juans has been working on several shoreline improvement projects this year, not to mention consulting with lots of property owners to explore potential new restoration sites. And in every case, we're partnering with landowners, government agencies, with other organizations, local contractors, and volunteers to help improve our county's shorelines for the forage fish, for the salmon, for the orca, and more. Speaking of forage fish, Friends is about to wrap up a countywide analysis of the shoreline armoring projects that have appeared on our private property shorelines in the last 10 years. So looking back at 10 years of data, what we've discovered is that less than 15% of those new shoreline armoring projects were fully permitted with the required local and state permits. Less than 15%. That means 85% were not fully permitted. And that's a big deal because it's the permitting process that helps landowners understand and follow the environmental protections that are in place. So these data, this new study, will help Friends of the San Juans open up productive, proactive conversations with our county and state agencies about how these projects are getting built without their permits and what we can all do together to work on improved tracking of conditions on the ground and not to mention effective enforcement. Another project that's wrapping up soon is our updated infographic that focuses on Salish Sea vessel traffic projections. So we periodically update this study to provide a snapshot of all the recently constructed and proposed or permitted port and refinery projects across the Salish Sea, including up into Canada. The purpose is to understand the cumulative increase in large commercial ships and tankers moving back and forth across the Salish Sea. What we found out through this analysis is that if all of the approved and proposed projects are completed, there'd be at least a 25% increase in ocean-going vessel traffic. And it's likely much more than that since we have data for Canadian projects, but many of the projects in Washington state haven't released their data. Increases in vessel traffic increase the underwater noise that interferes with orca hunting and social behavior, and increased vessel traffic also increases the risk of accidents and oil spills that would impact the entire marine ecosystem, including the critically endangered orcas, not to mention our economy and our way of life. This is important stuff, and it helps policymakers make decisions. Also this year, here at Friends, there's been a big expansion in our work with middle and high school students. We've grown our environmental mentoring program for high school students, which this year for the first time is expanding beyond San Juan Island to include students on Orcas Island as well. Friends of the San Juans has also developed a program that teaches students about marine food webs using virtual reality technology. Let me tell you, it is super cool that local students can use these VR headsets to dive underwater with the salmon. It's awesome. They're learning a lot thanks to Friends. And of course, our work continues to closely monitor everything from new construction permits across our county to port expansion permits across the Salish Sea and more. Just last week, we submitted comments objecting to an enormous and environmentally insensitive airplane hangar that was planned for the Roche Harbor area. We are out there in the community, keeping an eye on this stuff to ensure that laws and environmental protections are being followed and enforced in a fair and equitable way, so that our community works together to protect what we all love about these islands and our way of life here. And here at Friends, we're not afraid to pursue legal action when nothing else works. Right now, we're involved in 3 different legal cases, one involving an unpermitted bulkhead that wrecked a likely forage fish spawning site and was built over the county's objections. Another case involving a formal assessment of environmental impacts that the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers should have done years ago. And a final case that involves holding Phillips 66's feet to the fire. And you probably remember that we're involved in this one. It's still going on. Phillips 66 is appealing the decision that came down this last year in our favor. Through this case, we're making sure that this oil and gas giant is forthcoming about the impacts of their facility expansion projects to the endangered orcas and our other neighbors, friends, and relatives across the Salish Sea. Another project that's been going on this year and will continue into next year is that Friends of the San Juans is heavily involved in our county's comprehensive plan update process to make sure that environmental stewardship and climate action are front and center as our county plans and sets the rules for how it will grow over the next 10 to 20 years. We've created a comp plan action team of concerned community members like you to help build and show public support. Just yesterday, I spoke at our county's planning commission meeting, helping the commissioners understand the links between environmental stewardship and providing housing for families at a variety of income levels. Housing is an environmental issue. Okay, so I could keep going because there's so much more. If you're getting our monthly newsletters in your email, you've read about lots of things we do that I haven't mentioned here yet, like helping lead our community's efforts in plastics reduction and waste management, mapping the spawning sites of forage fish across our county with the help of tons of volunteers, helping ensure that recreational and commercial boaters do their part to protect eelgrass beds and stay clear of the pregnant orcas. And let's not forget the policy work at Friends. We are proactively making sure that when policy decisions are being discussed that affect our county's habitats and shorelines and rural character and climate readiness and long-term environmental vitality, when these things are being discussed, Friends of the San Juans is at the table. This last year has been astounding. Not bad for a staff of 8, most of whom are part-time. You know, in my time here over the last year, I've been so impressed with the skills and capabilities and like the professionalism of our staff here at Friends of the San Juans. I'm so lucky to be able to be right here, right now, talking about this. I'm surrounded by incredibly smart, incredibly dedicated, amazing people at Friends of the San Juans, both on staff and on the board. So on top of all of these programmatic efforts to champion the environmental vitality and resilience of the San Juan Islands and the Salish Sea, our organization has also been on a learning journey in the past year. One of the things that I've been able to bring to the organization is lots and lots of experience in organizational development and best practices. So behind the scenes in the last year, we've updated our financial policies and procedures. We've gone through and improved our HR systems and policies. And importantly, we've worked on improving work-life balance for our staff and worked on how we communicate with each other. Together with our board of directors, our staff went through a fairly intensive training series this last year on how to build an equitable and inclusive organization. We are still very much on that learning journey, but I've honestly been very proud to be part of an organization that's taking its own pursuit of excellence so seriously. And so with that, we turn our gaze to the future. As some of you know, in January of this year, Friends of the San Juans began a deep and comprehensive strategic planning initiative. As we began, we knew that getting the community engaged in this was going to be critical. So we started with a large focus group of community members from across the spectrum, representing a lot of different viewpoints, including members of Friends and non-members, Indigenous thought leaders in our community, government representatives, other nonprofits, even people that haven't always agreed with us. We wanted to hear all of these voices. And from there, we also conducted stakeholder interviews and polled our members and the general public. Led by Maketa Wilborn, who is an outstanding facilitator, by the way, our staff and board had a series of meetings to discuss the results of all of those community engagement efforts. What did we hear? What did we learn? With those results in mind, we then launched into discussions of the opportunities and challenges on the horizon for Friends. We assessed our current programs and capacity. We conducted an analysis of other organizations working on similar issues in this area. And then from there, we began to plan. Our board and staff developed a set of 7 key strategic priorities for our organization to help guide us over the next 5 years. And where we're at today is translating those key strategic priorities into on-the-ground, measurable, achievable action plans. We'll be sharing those plans with you in the coming months, but there are a couple of things that I can share right now. First off, we heard loud and clear that there is still a lot of good, solid alignment between our community's greatest needs and what Friends is working on. We're still doing the right things. The orcas still need our help, and same goes for the salmon they depend on, and the forage fish they depend on, and the natural shorelines and beaches they depend on. Friends is doing protection and restoration and policy work in these areas that no one else is. No one else is watching out for the huge mansions that are being planned right on top of sensitive habitats. And no one else in the San Juans is tracking the impacts of shipping vessels through our waters. The work of Friends of the San Juans, all of these programs that I was just describing to you a minute ago, it all still matters. So we came out of the strategic planning process, not with a mandate for our organization to change, but with a mandate for Friends of the San Juans to grow. Why? Because the needs are growing. Now, I'm speaking to the choir here, but every day, more and more people are moving to the San Juan Islands. The folks I've heard from in the real estate industry say they've never seen anything like this. The development pressures are higher right now than they have ever been. And in the next few years, those pressures will grow more and more quickly. The migration of people to the Pacific Northwest and to our islands in particular is just one aspect of how climate change will profoundly impact the San Juan Islands in the coming years. And you know the rest, hotter, drier summers with increased wildfire risks, more severe storms, a sea level that's expected to be 2 feet higher in Friday Harbor in my son's lifetime, sharp economic disruptions that affect all of us and will affect certain segments of our local population in life-threatening ways, mass extinctions of species, right? It's not coming, it's already happening, but it is going to get worse. And who is doing something about it? Who is fighting for climate action in our local government? Who is helping our community transition away from plastics? Who is protecting our endangered species? Who is helping our community, and especially our young people, understand the risks and the impacts of climate change through education programs? It's Friends of the San Juans. We get up every morning and we come to work, and this is what we do. But it hasn't been enough. The changes that need to happen in our community are not happening fast enough. Friends of the San Juans has to do more. We need to grow our impact, and we need to make sure that the work we do is effective. And we need more people working on this with us. That means growing our programs, and it also means growing our organizational capacity. If there was one organizational challenge that was identified during our strategic planning process as a weak spot, as having room for improvement, it was communication. Here at Friends, we haven't done a terrific job of communicating with our community. You know, there are people out there who have misconceptions about us. There are people out there who don't understand the breadth or the importance of our work. There are people out there that we've rubbed the wrong way, and you know, they should have been our allies in this climate work. You know, and heck, as I've gotten to know my neighbors, I've been kind of surprised to find out how many people don't even know that the organization exists. Or maybe it's like, yeah, Friends of the San Juans, is that the same thing as the Preservation Trust? So we've got to do a better job of reaching out. We've got to do a better job of communicating. We've got to get our messages out there more effectively. One of the things I've heard Linda Mapes say over and over again is that more people need to step up and get engaged. More people need to be working on this and working together to save the orca and save ourselves. So in the coming year, one of my highest priorities for Friends of the San Juans, in addition to looking at how we can strategically grow our programs, is to level up our communications capacity so that this community's coalition of people working on environmental and climate issues just grows and grows. More people getting educated about the issues, more people getting engaged, more people understanding what's needed, more young people coming to the table, more people becoming part of the solution. And so for Friends of the San Juans, how do we do that? Building our capacity for excellent communications strategy means staffing. And whether that's hiring a communications expert to come in or hiring someone in-house to be our director of communications or some combination of both, it takes money. So when you think about your support for Friends of the San Juans in the coming year, and you're thinking about how to make a tangible difference in the world based on your values, right? Your philanthropic priorities. If you decide to support Friends of the San Juans, I want you to know where your money is going. It's going to support the growth of our environmental and climate programs, and it's going to support the growth of our organization. The needs are growing, and so must we. Friends of the San Juans is going to continue building our coalition, and we're going to continue being a leader in this community and in this region to advance environmental stewardship and to be a champion for meaningful climate action so that our grandchildren's grandchildren can still enjoy the awesome beauty of the San Juan Islands and the Sailor Sea, and so that this area is still healthy 7 generations from now. In closing, I want to say thank you. If you're on the line right now listening to this, chances are you're already a supporter of this organization's work. Thank you for that. Thank you very much. You've made all of these successes in the past year possible, and you've also made it possible for us to create our ambitious plans for the next 5 years. This next year, the next 5 years are going to be absolutely critical. With development pressures and climate change, we have got to get this right. And we cannot do it without your partnership in this. As Friends of the San Juans looks ahead to our year-end fundraising, which begins today, right now, as we look ahead to that, thank you in advance for joining us again in this work and for your generous and impactful support.